Hi, gals and guys, Vetemor here, back at it again with another episode of the Vetcast. Today, our special guest is going to be Illuvium OG and staking guru, Deraji.
It is going awesome. Thanks for having me on again. I am honored to be one of the illustrious few to be invited back. So appreciate that.
I mean, the first time you came on, like, people really enjoyed that because you go super deep and you take no prisoners.
I am the bullish critic of Illuvium.
I definitely want to say before this starts, because a conversation between me and you, there may be things that people construe as financial advice. Nothing that we say is financial advice. You must do your own research, make your own choices, because you will bear the responsibility for them. Awesome. Now that that's out of the way, since our last chat on the Vetcast, a lot has obviously changed. We now have SLV 2. We've got the staking version 2 that's now live. In your views, what are the key changes that have happened between now and then, and how do they affect investors in Illuvium?
I think the biggest thing holistically is just how much the project has advanced. Like the time we're talking, this private beta is out. You've been playing that. I just got my invite yesterday, so I'm excited to jump in there. And we're expecting in the next 24 hours the announcement of the date for land sale. So I think it just gives so much more confidence in the project of what's going on. Kind of stepping back of where things at holistically, I think the biggest thing, like you said, is we got the new SILV2 token, that coming up on its first use case. And then, like you said, staking V2, huge changes there. And where we were at in January looks completely different than where we're at now here at the beginning of May.
Yeah. And then as for that, like, how is that, like, how has staking version 2 sort of affected the investors? What are the strategies that have changed, like the way that people should be looking at it?
Yeah, I've put out a couple of articles on this recently and have adjusted my staking calculator with some things that we can talk about in a bit. But I think the biggest thing is just seeing how the return rate, the APR, has changed and where that's coming from. And so if we look at the ILV pool back in January before the pause, we were up over 30%. There was about 1.1 million tokens in the pool. Pause happened, and we had about 3 months of no claiming except for people leaving. When pause came back and people were able to claim, we saw that number staked up to 1.4, which really just tanked the APR. And so again, that wasn't necessarily new money coming in. It was all rewards being claimed, locked for 12 months. But as of today, the APR is down under 20%. The SLP has been relatively stable. And so going into January, we saw this big kind of run up, and the APR was dropping from like 700 back when we started talking about this on the side down to like 350. As of today, it's down to 230, which is still freaking amazing, but we're not seeing necessarily new money coming in at this point, which is great for the SLP stakers. But that's one of the things that I'm speculating of, like, hey, that APY is still amazing. Where is new money going to come in from?
Yeah, totally. So the reason, obviously, why the SLP pool has sort of maintained a pretty like stable APR is because obviously, just like we need new people to come and stake into it for that to decrease like significantly. Whereas if nobody new comes into the ILV pool, everyone that's already staked in either pool, like the rewards that they claim in ILV, just go into that pool. So that pool's just continually increasing in size, and that like APY is just being soaked up like all over. So can I also ask, when you're talking about like APR and APY, just real quick, let's cover the differences, because doesn't the Illuvium website actually show the APY, but the APR is somehow like more accurate?
Yeah, I believe the team switched the equation. We had an issue a couple months back where they switched it, and there was like an instantaneous 100% drop in the APR. I have an article out in September where the calculation's still right. So what I do is I look at what the staking pool says, and I look at my data, like how many ILV am I earning for each of the pools, and kind of manually calculate what is my APR. Right now, what I would say is like the spot APR of what I'm earning right now matches. And so it's like if you would take what I get today, multiply it by 365, that's the APR that's shown. It doesn't account for the 2% or the 3% drop that happens every 2 weeks. And
Right.
so that right there, APR is a little bit artificially high. In my staking dashboard, I give like a calculated, if nothing else changed and it was just the drop, what do I think the APR really is? And that drops it down. It's like 170 for the SLP, like 15% for the ILV pool.
So that's
But
just what it says, factoring in the loss of 3% every 2 weeks.
exactly. And so I'll say I did an article on this as well of the APY on the dashboard, the official Illuvium dashboard. I'm not a big fan of. It's like Leela Hell and I have done our calculators, and what the APY does is say, okay, if every month you claim to compound your rewards, what would that be? And a couple things are wrong with that. So one, for a lot of smaller stakers, you're never going to get your transaction fee back. It doesn't account in for the ETH transaction fee. And number two is doing a time-based claim is generally bad. So doing every week, every month, because the rewards decrease over time. And so what we've shown mathematically that the better strategy is claim every X ILV accrued. And so for me, it's somewhere in the like 8 to 15 range, which I know for a lot of like the average stakers, that's a lot. There's people that are way bigger than me, but like that's the kind of range where the payback makes sense to me when you account in how long it takes to earn back your transaction fee.
So obviously, for anyone watching right now, in the description of this video, there will be linked all of Deraji's different articles, but also right now he's talking about a calculator. So if you are staked or thinking about staking, you can actually check out his calculator, which will also be in the description. Him and Layla Hell designed it, and you can actually basically plug in all your information that you've staked in ILV and get just far more accurate information, not only for right now, but also projecting into the future, and to sort of have a look at how many ILV should you be claiming for yourself, because it does depend on the size of your stake.
And one of the things just to call out that's super important there is a column. It's like, if you never claim, this is how much you have. And so I always encourage folks to compare, like, here's me staked, never claiming. Here's me claiming every day. And you're going to see, okay, here's the maximum possible rewards I can get. But your staking fees are going to be in the like tens of thousands of dollars of ETH. And so unless you're the biggest of whales, that really doesn't make sense. You're better off just buying ILV yourself.
Yeah. And the other change that's obviously come with staking version 2 is that gas fees for claiming have been reduced. Do you think the staking into SLP is actually far more like possible for smaller bags? And what do you think right now for SLP staking is the barrier to entry?
That's something I need to dig into the data because I haven't staked myself, and you and I haven't looked into the on-chain data to see what the new fee is. I would say before in V1, because you've got, okay, you got to buy ILV. Step 2, you've got to pool the ILV with ETH in Sushi. Step 3,
and all those transactions are the same.
You come over to Illuvium and then stake it. So the first two are the same. The third one is now cheaper. And so that is the piece that got a little bit better. If we were $2,500 before, I would say we're probably in the $1,000 to $1,500 to me makes sense. But again, that depends on how much you want to use of your investment into fees that isn't yielding anything.
Yeah. That makes sense. Because that was obviously like one of the bigger transactions, the one for staking, and the other ones though haven't changed. I definitely need to update that calculator. Once I do, I will link it in this video, but that'll be not today, not immediately. I'll actually see if I can do it before this video goes up, because it's not that hard to obtain that data. And then
real
is there
quickly, let me jump on this. Cool. So the other thing that's changed for like you and me is claiming, like you said, got so much cheaper, and you're able to claim both the ILV and the SLP pools in the same transaction now. And that transaction got cheaper, and gas has generally been down. And so I looked back of when I was claiming where it made sense. I had one claim back in November that cost me like $230 between the two pools. And I claimed yesterday and it was like 28 bucks. And that was, the gas wasn't great. I've already had one claim that was under $15 since V2.
So like nearly 10x.
Huge difference.
No, it's definitely a ton more efficient and being able to claim together. Another question though is, so obviously you're staked, let's say in SLP, but like, is there any reason to claim SLP and ILV, or should you be claiming the ILV pool maybe less often and claiming the SLP pool on its own? Because that's obviously even cheaper gas than claiming both pools, right?
Yeah, I mean, that really depends on how much you have staked, which if you're doing claiming on the frequency that I talk anyway, it's really a marginal difference between claiming both pools at the same time and just claiming the SLP, which is the one you should be claiming more frequently. And so I think even yesterday I looked, it was like $4 different to not claim the ILV pool. And so it's almost the same break even of how many days does it take to get back my return. So I've just been claiming both. And then
So
my
if you
claim
have
strategy is
enough
always
ILV,
ILV.
yeah. So if you have enough ILV rewards accrued and you're willing to claim, might as well claim both pools while you're at it.
It's made sense to me.
Yeah. Are there any other key points regarding the staking before we move on to the land sale?
Well, the question is, how much do you want to dig into future APR? Do we want to leave that for another talk?
Let's dig into it. I think we can talk about it quite a bit. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about when it comes to, obviously this is the APR right now. It's around, as you said, 170 if we factor in the 3% decrease every 2 weeks. What happens when eventually like seed unlocks come? Are they potentially going to be coming into staking SLP, taking up all that yield? What kind of percentages are we looking at in the future once these events take place?
Yeah, you're totally nailing my big hypothesis of where I think that new money's coming in. And so, like we talked, what's driving volume in the ILV pool is still going to be that claimed ILV that has to vest for 12 months. And so we're getting like a couple thousand rewards every day. So let's say it's like 3,000. That's really what the pool volume growth is in the ILV. And that adds up over time. And so that's going to continue to drop the APR of the ILV core pool until Revdis really comes in to pick it up, which is the main reason long-term to be on that side. Like you said, we're about 2 months out from unlock. And with the delay on the seed and the team unlock, it now lines up almost perfectly with the folks that were in at the very beginning of Illuvium staking that claimed almost 12 months ago. So now their vested ILV is able to be withdrawn, so they can sell it, they can let it ride and still be at a 2x weight in the ILV pool. But like we're saying, like right now there's about 10 times the return in the SLP. Completely different level of risk, completely different level of understanding for folks that are comfortable adding liquidity. But the people that were in early and the seed and team are probably the most savvy, most long-term confident in the project. And so to me, I see that difference in rewards in the SLP versus the ILV is just too appealing for them not to pull out some of that money, either add ETH to it and stake it in the SLP, or sell half of it for the ETH, match it up, and then bring it in. And so the latest version of my calculator that I've updated, that's really what I'm accounting in. So like where the ILV pool growth is based on the number of new issued tokens in rewards. The SLP is a percent of the unlocked tokens that get matched up and moved over to the SLP. And even at like 40% of the ILV gets moved over, we're still above 100% for the better part of this year.
That's actually just great news, because I think a lot of people just kind of just considering it in their heads would probably think if like half of seed went into SLP, like we're going to be at like 10%, like almost immediately it's just going to get soaked up. But actually, even if they went like half in all the way until the end of the year, like we'd still be at a reasonable APR, which is actually very cool. I've heard some people say that like how much actually is being unlocked. But I guess, sorry, it's just that everything that's gone into the SLP pool is obviously only like tokens that are not from yield. But what about the tokens that will also come out? Because people's actual ILV rewards, they're also going to start unlocking. So what if people stake those as well as the seed tokens?
So that's how I'm factoring it in. If we
All
look
right,
at
you're factoring
what
both in.
yeah, to me,
Okay.
it's almost the same pool of folks.
Yeah.
Like I do see probably nearly 100% of the seed and team tokens moving to one of the pools because it's just essentially a no-brainer that if they're that bullish long term, they can actually make more yield by moving over to the SLP, even if they just go the ILV and they're confident in Revdis longer term, they're going to get yield farming rewards. And if they lock for a year at the 2x weight, they're going to get slightly more Revdis than they do today. And
Yeah.
so in the next couple of days, I should have a new article coming out that really breaks down how Revdis is going to work, especially as we talk land sale for folks to expect. But that'll show you why I think seed and team also gets moved over to one of these other pools.
Yeah, and the thing that makes me quite confident about them moving over as well is obviously we had their unlocks delayed and they actually proposed that. One of the biggest VCs in that in out of the VCs, I think it's actually the biggest one in Illuvium. They've actually recently done a huge fundraise. So we might not even see them sell half, to get ETH. They might actually be coming in with fresh ETH, going straight into that liquidity pool, because why give up your ILV? There's just no real reason to just go really hard on that, because 200%, even if it goes down to 100%, that's incredible yield. And what my next question is though, with that yield slowly decreasing over time, but not like that quick, when do you foresee revenue distribution becoming high enough and yield becoming low enough that that balance tips and actually staking directly into the ILV pool starts becoming more profitable? Because obviously if you stake $1,000 in the ILV pool, that $1,000 gets revenue distribution, but only a tiny bit of yield. But then if you stake it in the SLP pool, only half of it actually collects revenue distribution, the ILV half, but the Ethereum half doesn't. But if the yield is so high that you're making more ILV that way, you end up getting more Revdis long term, of course.
Yeah, that's really a bet in the game and getting paid player adoption, which is my biggest thing for long-term success, is like, what is the rate at which people come in and try it? And what is the retention of those folks as paid players? And so if you listen to some of the conversations with Andrew, he talks about like, hey, it's going to be a slower adoption. We look where the market is. There's still a lot of sentiment of mainstream gamers, which really is the key to some of Illuvium hitting crazy targets, which I think are achievable longer term. But the question is, how does that curve grow to get there? And from what I'm seeing right now, again, the open beta or the private beta overworld, we've got to get the other aspects of the game into private beta, then open beta, which is going to be kind of the community jumping in there, starting to pay and actually collect. But it's that long-term mainstream adoption. And so if we think about where does Revdis come from, that's the main source. Land is going to be awesome. Illuvitar sale is going to be awesome. But to really make up that difference in return versus yield farming, we've got to grow that. And so that's really the bet that people have to make, is where do I see that going in the next 12 months? If I do lock SLP for 12 months, am I giving up Revdis? And like right now, I think if I were a betting man, I would rather be on the SLP side than bet on Revdis giving me 100% return. But that's something that's on my list of, okay, how high would revenue have to be to match over time? At the same time, it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that the more things grow, the more it's going to attract new investors. And so the faster it grows, the more outside money is going to say, hey, this is a legit project. There's actually stuff going on here that's generating revenue, retaining players, and it's not just kind of a pump and dump model. That's where we could really see kind of the convergence of Revdis taking over.
The other thing as well is that Revdis may, in a sense, never take over, just because, well, not take over by itself, just because if we're never gonna see 100% Revdis, because if it gets that high, people are just gonna be buying ILV token like mad, you know. So the price of ILV goes up, and it will balance around maybe the 25% mark, I'd say. That sounds a lot more like reasonable. I think 10 to 25% a year returns via Revdis makes a lot of sense. And it, like, as time goes by, I think it definitely like moves towards like 15 to 5%, just because it stabilizes and it becomes a very legitimate studio, and people will just be happy to invest and be earning 5-10% dividends a year in the project. So as a sort of side note, when could yield actually end up falling to like 25% on the SLP pool?
Ooh, good question. Look at my model, see where that puts it. It's going to be quite a ways out.
Because I think that's a very interesting question.
Again, this is trusting my math, which I don't for the SLP that far out, because it's a huge assumption of where's the new money coming in.
Where's the new
Is
money
it
coming in?
Seed investors is my idea that seed and team tokens move over, that unlocked ILV moves over, publicity
There's a lot
goes
of
up,
assumptions,
people come in, and I just it's tough to model that yet. That said,
model it at 100% of unlocks going in. Just like worst case. I think that it's good to I like starting at worst case, and then maybe move to 50% and see how that changes it.
Yeah. So if everything moves over, it hits 100% APR the end of August this year. 50% about end of November. 25% end of next March is where we're at.
So nearly a year.
So nearly a year above 25%.
If absolutely every single unlock goes, which is ridiculous. That can't happen, I don't think. Not all into SLP.
If we take that down to 50%, hits the 25% APR mark end of next July. So
not that much difference.
No,
not that much difference. Well, that means that we almost practically definitely have at least a year of where SLP is going to be better than revenue distribution, if we assume that Revdis isn't above 25%, which I don't think it could go.
And there's always the fact that we just called this out on YouTube, that now we've changed the future and everybody jumps into the SLP because we just told them it's going to be sweet for a year. So not financial advice.
How much SLP even is there on the markets to take?
I mean, it would drive token price as well, because there'd have to be new money coming in, buying ILV, pairing it with ETH, putting it back in. But it does create new tokens, so that could ramp up. We're at about 100,000 SLP tokens total right now. And so it just, as the future goes on, that the SLP price is going to go up. And so it's going to take more money to push it up, but it could be realistically anything.
The other thing is SLP actually technically, because it is just ILV and ETH tokens, could actually go up indefinitely, just because as you put more SLP, you're just adding to the liquidity pool, and then people just take stuff out of the liquidity pool and put it back in the form of SLP. So then it just keeps spiraling until just ILV price goes really high and APY just goes down.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the SLP token price is, a function of ILV price, ETH price, the ratio of the two, and transaction fees get added in.
Yeah.
But it's really those first two pieces.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. But it's likely good for a year. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then do you think that we will see a lot of like Seed and Team, like they're savvy, they know about, you know, what's been going on with Illuvium. I can't foresee many of them staking into the ILV pool. Like, it just seems like such a bad play, right?
Well, I mean, it's a bet in faster adoption, faster revenue generation, and that I don't necessarily want to lock for a year in this other pool, knowing that, hey, we've got some big things lined up. We're going to do the biggest esports tournament. We're going to start rolling that out, and it is going to spiral Revdis, and I don't want to give that up. And so let me go over to the ILV pool. That's really the bet that we're talking about.
I think the other thing is with the people that like staked into ILV near the start, like the huge OG whales, I think most of them also, some of them have been burned by the fact that they staked in ILV only because they didn't understand SLP. So now when they get returns, they're gagging to just go hard into the SLP and actually soak up some of that SLP yield, I think, as well with their rewards. So I think a lot of them will also be doing that. But I think you're right that it is a bet. So I think me and you overall, we're quite. I personally also feel that like I don't expect that next year is gonna be this insane year and we're gonna see like $100,000 ILV and we're gonna see 200 million people playing the game. Like I don't personally expect that. Like I hope it happens, great, you know, but I don't really think that that's sustainable, and I think it's much more the kind of thing that we're going for is like if we can hit 10 million players by the end of next year, that's insane, and that's great. If we can hit 1 million players by the end of next year, like I think that's still great. And the other thing is I don't expect token price to I don't think any of the like fundamentals affect token price that much for the first like for the next like 2-3 years while unlocks are happening. There's just a lot of churn, a lot of movement, whereas like in 3 to 5 years things stabilize and become a lot more fundamental and mature as the thesis plays out.
Yeah, and that's a lot more of my hypothesis of why I'm here is like, where are we going to be in 5 years? This
Yeah.
isn't a 1 year. Like if you're looking for, hey, this is the next big thing, it's going to 10x in the next couple weeks. That's not the kind of math that I do, and it's not the kind of projections that we look at. I think you and I see the long-term value, the commitment that the team has and the community they've built. And that to me is what gives me confidence that, hey, this is a 5-year thing. What's going to set me best up for that kind of long-term perspective versus kind of flipping based on token price?
I think flipping based on token price is one of the most dangerous games you can play. Personally, just not capable of it. I'm good at losing money at it though. uh, very easy to. It's just so much better to be in the market than just trying to like time it. I've seen too many people just like wait on the side of the road with their bags, waiting to get in a cab, and then like all the cars are gone. Yeah, and then they're always like, "Oh, I'm just waiting for a dip," and it's like, yeah, I DCA man, DCA. And then so let's like, how does everything we've spoken about so far kind of impact the land sale? Like, obviously, we'll be talking about revenue distribution, but before that, let's just cover like how do you feel about it being a Dutch auction, and how do you see it playing out price wise?
Yeah, good question. I think the timing of this is super interesting. First of all, that we just had the ape land sale this past weekend, and we saw the fiasco that was with gas prices. And that was something that I wrote about like last November, was why higher prices are better, why the Dutch auction format is better. And if we just look at the ape sale, like there was a $500 million that went into it, but only about 320 million actually went to the project, and the rest of it was burned or went to miners. And that's the thing for me. It's like you need to create a format where more of that money, like clearly there was $500 million worth of demand for this thing. How does all of that come to the project and not just get burned? And I think the team has done a good job raising prices to hopefully get it out of like immediate purchase, which if it does immediate purchase and people literally ape in and spend a bunch of ETH to get their transaction purchase first, like we're at $500 million and not even counting tier 5. And that is just ridiculous. If all of that goes to the project, that's just a huge amount of revenue that's going to get distributed. So Kieran mentioned it in the AMA that he and Aaron did after kind of the proposal for land sale. It's like, we did our job right if the properties don't sell in the first couple minutes or the last couple minutes. As long as it's somewhere in that curve, things are good. And I think where the initial prices started out, so if we do it in USD today, tier 1 is about $6,000, tier 2 is about $18,000, tier 3 is $60,000, tier 4 is $236,000. Like,
Yeah.
those to me are fairly ridiculous numbers when you consider there's 20,000 plots of them. And so I think the concern is we're going to be watching this auction live and seeing who shows up first. Is it the whales that come in and buy super early? Is it people that don't understand how the Dutch auction works? What's going on with transaction fees? But I think we were talking before you started recording, like $200 million would be a hugely successful sale. And that means that the average property goes for about 40% of the starting price. And that happens like almost 45 minutes in to the auction for each plot. So I think it's going to be, I think the format is great. I think the pricing decay, we'll just see as we get to later points of the auction, how much of the popularity is in each of the different tiers. Is there more demand for tier 1 or tier 4, of which goes at more of a premium? Who's buying? Are they buying multiples? Is it people that are just in there for one? And kind of projecting, do we get a little bit of a gas war towards the end? If I come out midway through the auction, it's like, hey, tier 1 is on average selling for 35%, and then everybody starts buying right at 35%. That kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
But you've got to be quick because the decay is 2.5% per minute. And so we'll just see how consistently that is.
Yeah, definitely. The thing that I like about this form of Dutch auction is that it's not like every single plot of land is on sale and 2 hours later or 5 hours later they're all gone and it's just a decay. Whereas this is like batches every hour being released, and each batch lasts 2 hours for the 3 days, which is like you get to not even participate in the first batch of land sale. You can just watch it, see what happens, see what other people do, and actually learn from that, which is unique from what I've seen in other land sales where things happen very fast, things sell out, madness ensues, a lot of people sitting on the side that just couldn't do anything, didn't understand what just happened, and it's over. And that just leaves a lot of like bruised feelings and then usually gas wars as well. I think that it's gonna be interesting to actually watch it. I definitely think that we should both live stream that. I'd love to have you on to literally like watch it and commentate on it, because it'll be great to have your perspective on that. What's your personal strategy coming into it? We've chatted with some other influencers. I think a lot of people are of the mind that in the very beginning it's likely to be bought at too high a price, and then likely on the second day it might be like demand falls as a bunch of the ETH and SLV has already been spent, and then in the third day maybe like there's a bit of FOMO last minute, like prices go back up. Or the fact that everyone's saying this, could it end up being, you know, the opposite?
I think the key piece is who shows up. And so the team is doing a great job trying to drive publicity for the event. But again, it's like, are we selling to the people that have been here and the community members that actually know what's going on? And we do have some huge whales that have been collecting SILV2 that we know have a bunch of ETH on the side. We've seen Kieran tweet out like at FTX, at Coinbase to try to get tier 5 buyers lined up, and seeing that drive publicity as well. But for me, it really is like studying the inefficiencies. Like, as much as the team is trying to balance, like tier 2 generates more than tier 1, tier 3, like if you look at it again from a long-term perspective, they should be commensurate of where their sale price is to the resources they're going to generate, which are for sale. We don't know the details there, but in theory, that should balance out over time. And so assuming the prices were set reasonably at kind of the the scaling, and also we look at scarcity. Like for me, I want to study like where's the inefficiency? Like is tier 1 going disproportionately low or high relative to tier 2? Is tier 3 the sweet spot? And so it's kind of seeing those average sales as we go. If like tier 4 is constantly selling out at the top and tier 1 is lasting to the last 10 minutes of the hour, like I'm going to be snapping up some tier 1s and just forget about tier 4. If I had to say my strategy going in, I have been doing some things with the unofficial liquidity pools. I'm one of the bad guys that has been adding liquidity there and trying to get some fees from that. I'm out at this point because I think it's going to be a really volatile price, especially with the announcements coming up here. But I do have a pool of SILV2 that I have set aside for that. If I just say, what do I think I'm going to do long term? I want one tier 3 to play that. And then I will look at inefficiencies in the price of tier 2 and tier 1 and potentially buy some of those as well to flip or hold on to longer term.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. The big like even if like all the prices end up being commensurate to earnings and kind of in that way, the other thing that makes higher tier lands more desirable, beside the fact that they are obviously more rare, is also that if you want to spend the amount that a tier 4 costs on land, and you just buy a tier 4 instead of like a ton of tier 1s, then you can actually play this all on your own, manage these resources on your own. Whereas if you instead buy, I don't know, let's say like 10, like 20, 50, whatever tier 1s, you're not going to be able to play on all of those yourself. So you're actually going to end up earning like half as much by having to get like, you know, scholars, and then you've got to put in work managing the scholars. So there is actually a convenience and premium to those higher tier lands that may make them priced a little bit higher than their earnings, just because of like that convenience and efficiency in that way. Do you expect to see something like that, or is that something that's more likely to occur after the land sale takes place, just over time, naturally? And at first, maybe some people just find them too expensive to get into them.
I think, I mean, it's an NFT sale. It's land, it's metaverse, like all the words that people were diving in right now. And you tie a scarcity to it that there's only 869 tier 4s in this batch. There's 12,000 tier 1s. And so, again, it depends. Like, our audiences of who reads me, who watches you, is generally the more informed folks of the project. And so, us thinking about it logically and me mathematically is not necessarily the people that jump at, hey, there's a metaverse land sale. And so that's where I think there's inefficiency and just who shows up. Totally, if you're thinking about it logically and you've got a budget, you've got a limited amount of time, get the highest tier that you can, get one of them if your goal is long-term kind of land management and getting the resources out. If you have no freaking clue what you're doing, who knows? You're going to be snapping up tier 4s at instantaneous prices at $200,000.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely think that as much as like we're super deep into this space and we are in our own bubble, and there's a ton of people waiting to come into Illuvium that aren't having the conversations that we're having right now, that aren't considering these things. And even like when we said like, are people probably gonna buy less in the middle and then like FOMO at the end and like maybe FOMO in the beginning, I think that is very likely to still play out, because the only people really thinking about that, I think, are maybe like seed investors that are deep into it, like people that are in the Discord every day, people that are having these conversations. And if you just look at the views on this video, you look at the views on the other Illuvium YouTubers, they're not millions of views. They're like 1,000, maybe 2,000, maybe 3,000 views most of the time at the max. And that just shows that nobody is really paying attention. So the people that are thinking about these things, as much as we feel that like the space is oversaturated, Illuvium is not. We are early as heck, and there's not many people really considering the investment side of Illuvium, because the majority of the market is waiting for Illuvium to deliver products, and I'm certain that there's tons of money out there that are waiting for a metaverse project, not just to come out to get an early investment into, but to actually see it succeed and then to invest in it, because then it's a de-risked investment. You can only put so much money in a risky investment. Illuvium still is, because we haven't seen it play out. Once it plays out, even though the yield isn't what it was, it's more stable, and there's less risk.
And I think it's probably an even smaller group than you think. So yeah, if you look at your views, like if all of us that watch your videos buy land, like we're each getting 8. Like that ain't happening. So it's got to be from some other folks. And I've been hanging out more in the Illuvium Zero channel on Discord lately. There's a lot of folks there that are in the channel that don't know what's going on, don't know how the Dutch auction works, don't know how to even buy it. And so that's where I think a lot of it, more of it's probably going to be ETH and SILV2 than we think. And people aren't going to really understand the deeper implications of what the team has planned for this land.
That's the other thing. They recently sent out the mailing list with announcing that the land sale is going to be announced. Like that's actually and like a ton of people came into the Discord, and what that shows is like, there's over 1 million people on this mailing list, so there's tons of interest in Illuvium, but all those people are just sitting on the side and waiting for things to come that aren't educated on the like fundamentals of what's taking place. And as you said, like everyone's coming in and they're like, oh, how does land sale work? Like, what's a Dutch auction? What's this? Aren't these prices too high? So just to quickly like cover the prices being too high, I very much agree with you that you were saying that ultimately, like, the demand is out there, whatever the demand is, and that demand is gonna go in. And if the prices are, let's say, $10, but the demand exists to spend $15 on that thing, they're gonna end up spending that, and it's gonna end up going on gas, and then the project just doesn't get that money. So then, no one gets it essentially, or no one that's part of the project. On the higher end, though, I've even heard some people recently saying, aren't the prices actually too low? So we talked about this before the show, and if all the land gets bought at max prices, that's like $500 million. But then so was the recent sale of the ape coin stuff. Do you think that maybe the starting prices should have been at, like, I don't know, $1 billion, and then go down from there, just in case there is $500 million in demand?
I mean, the piece that you're balancing there is disappointment and engagement, because if you have a bunch of people that buy too high, like these are the people with money that were interested in your project that you now
that
may
are now
have
disappointed.
off. That's hey, my resale on this is half of what I bought it for at mint. And so I think that's the piece to judge. Like if you make it ridiculous, and you also lose a little bit of the hype and the excitement of, okay, it's going to start, like, let's take T3, starting price is 20 ETH. After 11 minutes, it's 15 ETH. And so it's going to be dropping fast at the beginning.
Fast,
and people are watching like, okay, who's going to jump first at this thing? Because it's like each plot is sold individually. And so if I'm watching this one, this is the one I want, and I've got a number in my head of when I'm going to click buy, it becomes that game. And that's where it's really going to be interesting to see this demand, to see where that is. Because at 28 minutes, not even a half hour in, it's going to be at 10 ETH. It's like, okay, it's a gamble. So it's actually going to be, to me, more fun than watching the bid up on the other side. And so by not setting the prices too ridiculously high, you get this bit of excitement. When do I pull the trigger? But trying to balance not having that disappointment of folks overpay and now kind of hate the project.
And then on the Revdis side, how much can people expect to earn from Revdis? And I think we were talking about this privately. We both sort of think that the expected range in total is probably more like 100 million to like $250 million raised from the entire land sale. How does that look like per ILV token in revenue distribution?
Yeah, I think the biggest question that we haven't really talked about yet, and I don't know if we want to get into too much, but it's like what percent of SILV2 is used? I think that's the other major factor that we need to think about. So
Yeah.
as of today, there's somewhere around $115 million in Illuvium gift cards out there that could be used on this. Can only be used on tier 1 through 4, can't be used on tier 5. And so it's a question of how much do we think tier 5 is going to go for. But for me, like I'm putting the number at like 70% of existing SILV2 gets used. And so that essentially takes like $75 million off the top of, even if we sell everything for $200 million, Revdis is based on 125 million. And so that's the other piece to consider here. Also, if something crazy happens that we get a lot of publicity for Illuvium, which would be amazing as we approach the land sale and token pumps, that's going to pump the value of SILV2. And so the higher the token goes, the lower the revenue distribution is. And so for me, I'm thinking like, okay, macro market, nothing else happens. ETH stays where it is. ILV stays right around 500. What does that mean in terms of Revdis if 70% gets used? And so it actually drops the lower you go, because let's say total land sale is $120 million. If 75 million of that is SILV2, we're only at like 45 million in Revdis that gets distributed. If we're at $250 million, $75 million is SILV2. Now we're talking 175 million that gets distributed. So the numbers are a little bit wonky
Yeah.
how they look in the table. But if we sell it everything at half price, I'm going to put in hopefully conservatively that tier 5 total generates $15 million. That means at weight 1 of the ILV pool, you're getting about $14 per token. Weight 2 would be 28. For the SLP, it's about 40 and 80 per SLP token. If that drops down to 25% of max price, which puts us in the $120 million range, ILV pool Revdis is $450 or $9 at weight 2, or $13, $26. So there's a big jump there between 80 and 26, and that's because of that percent that is SILV2. But that's kind of the ballpark that I'm thinking. So per token, it's in the like $450 to $14 range for ILV, 13 to 41 for the SLP.
So we're not likely going to see more than like $20 an ILV.
I don't think so. I mean, that you'd have to be up in the like everything sells for about 75%, or something completely insane happens on the tier 5.
Now, I just want to paint a scenario here. Just bear with me. It might be a bit bullish, but just why not? Just speculation. What if we get so to my knowledge, the tier 5 land sale is taking place just before, maybe a few days before the main one. So what this is going to do is drive a bunch of eyes onto the project and onto the rest of the land sale, especially if we see something like, I don't know, like 1, 2, 3, 5, $10 million sales on these plot 5 plots of land, which of course there are only 7 that will ever exist, and only 2 of these are going to be up for auction. Highest bidder wins. ETH only. Just before I continue on that, actually, how high do you predict, just speculation, on how high those tier 5 lands could go?
I mean, for my model, I'm throwing in 7.5 million a piece right now. I know numbers have been thrown around higher than that, but that is still like, this is the first land auction.
Yeah.
Let's see what the visibility is. And like I said earlier, Kieran is tweeting at the potential buyers, like who he sees buying this thing. And it's somebody like Coinbase, crypto.com, like the guys that are buying naming rights on legit sporting stadiums. Like this is their chance to get in forever and own that naming right, that notoriety, that potentially $7 million. Like these guys are throwing around more money than that. What did Coinbase spend on their Super Bowl commercial? Like that was about the price of where I'm projecting tier 5 land, and that was for a 1-minute commercial, let alone having it forever, this plot of land that's going to run esports tournaments.
It's mad that commercials cost that much on the Super Bowl. That's actually crazy. Um, Epic. And then let's say we get this like 7.5 mil each. So that's like 15 mil. Isn't that like the highest that's ever been spent on land? On a land sale, definitely, right? On a single plot of land in a sale. That would be record breaking.
Certainly at mint. I don't think anything has come close to that on resale. Yeah.
Yeah, at mint. That's ridiculous. And then so we get that huge publicity, eyes on the project, and then maybe a bunch of interest not only in the land sale but also in the token, with people coming into the Discord asking about the staking. Maybe like a pump in price. Let's say we get a 2x in the price, and what ends up happening is the SLV is suddenly more valuable. So it's not, let's say, 75 mil waiting to come in, it's 150. So suddenly, if half of the purchases take place in SLV out of the entire land sale, that's 300 mil coming in. So what almost ends up happening is people with SLV who have bought like at a way lower price, they suddenly feel, oh, I'm willing to buy land at a way higher price suddenly because I didn't pay that higher price to get it. And then people, all this attention and publicity, like all these new people coming in that want to participate, some of them, many of them, in fact, will be coming in with just ETH bags and kind of just looking to buy with ETH, and they'll see all this attention, they'll see these high prices that these lands are going at, and just jumping in and buying at like 75% of starting price near the top, maybe even consistently throughout, as you know, there'll be fluctuations, but like could this kind of a scenario in my mythical imaginary world play out? It's a perfect storm if it's anything.
Now, I think it's interesting to see the order of events that tier 5 is going to go first, because I could also, again, being the bullish critic, like what if they don't get millions of dollars for tier 5 and it goes the opposite direction and doesn't drive publicity? I don't think we're going to see a major change in publicity. I think we just don't see the bump.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing token price just kind of follows the market of ILV relative to ETH is the same. 100 to 200 million seems reasonable in my mind for it. And so I think we could very easily see that. If we do go your directions, like, hey, we get $15+ million in this advanced coverage, we really market the hell out of that. Like, I'll kind of just use my math on, like, if everything sold max price, which is kind of what we're talking about, if things pump, yeah, there's a little bit of change in SILV ratio, but I mean, we're talking $33 to $63 Revdis per ILV. On the SLP side, it's like 96 to 192 is what we're talking, kind of very max high end of what you're getting Revdis.
Yeah. And then to bring up a conspiracy theory, some have even said that there are whales waiting with big bags of SILV2, and they're waiting for land sale to come and for them to buy a ton of ILV off the market just to raise the price, just to get more purchasing power in this land sale and bring in more hype coming into the project, coming into the coin, and just creating this beautiful whirlwind of happiness and spunkiness. What do you say to those conspiracy theorists?
I love it, but as you were talking, I'm like, ooh, how would I play that? And I think it's almost like having the SILV2 liquid on my side, like that's going to drive up the price over there. If ILV pumps, it's going to be short-lived just for the auction. What percent do I just sell back short term? Because it is going to drive hype. And if price pumps to 750 versus 500 today, can I get 700 and SILV2, still get the land that I want, but kind of deleverage and kind of play that out? So go ahead, Whales. I approve. Go for it.
Yeah, that is another thing that could potentially, just in my head, potentially cause less SILV to end up actually getting spent on the land sale, bringing us more ETH. If like, because there are a bunch of people sitting with SILV that are sort of expecting it to pump near the land sale, and that might not even be waiting to use it all for the land sale, but just waiting to sell some of it back. Um, could we? What happens if like bare like 25% of the land sale ends up being SILV, and we've got like, I don't know, 50% of starting prices? How does that end up looking? That's
I
like
mean,
250
like
mil.
how I've modeled it right now is about 75 million SILV2 gets used. And so if we look at that, if everything sells at half, SILV is going to be a third of the
Yeah,
revenue. If everything sells at a quarter, it's going to be 60%. So the actual
yeah.
ETH portion of it, ignoring tier 5, is only going to be 40% of the sale.
And what leads you to believe that 75% of the SILV will be used?
I totally just made up a number and it feels true.
No, that sounds about right. I
I mean, this
think,
is it is the first use case,
yeah.
and there is like for the folks that watch
But
this,
there is a
they know there's a
Luvatars
liquidity
coming,
pool.
and a Luvatars will also be viable with SLV too.
I- I'm excited for Illuvitar's. I think land has a more
Yeah,
clear like long-term investment, long-term return. And so to me, and since it's coming first,
yeah,
folks are going to use that first, and then we'll figure out Illuvitar's later.
yeah. I think that is probably more likely.
The other thing I did want to just throw out as a stat for you as we talk about whales is there are 3 whales that have more than $2.5 million in SILV2. So there are, whether this is various DAOs, different gaming guilds, things like that, if they're looking to buy, there is a bunch of big guys that have, it's 3 folks that have over around 5,000 SILV2 sitting on the side. The biggest holder is like around
Jeez,
12,000.
who who is that? We just don't know, right?
No,
It's it,
I haven't been able to track down. They don't have it tied to a name.
it's probably a multitude of individuals. It likely could be a group like I don't know. Could it be a Polemus? I don't know. YGG. I don't know. It could be a guild. Be interesting to see how it all plays out. Do you think there's anything else that we should cover? I think I've enjoyed the speculation. It's been very fun. I've missed these times actually.
This has been a really fun time for me. So again, coming out of staking V2, coming up to actual use cases, kind of playing both sides of what's going on for the buyer, what's going on for the investor. Like it's really interesting, and I've done more speculation myself publicly than I think I've ever done on the project before. But it just really is an exciting time to see everything that we've been looking at, the project that's coming together. Now we're going to see the first use case. And so, how does this go? And so, got our speculations. We'll see if we're right, but it'll be really interesting. I'd love to connect. I'm definitely going to be nerding out and seeing how I can pull the data live during the land sale and put that together. So, we have to have our next conversation then.
I think I'd like to maybe get like 2, 3, 4 people on and just all watch it together. Because when it's 4 people, like two could just be talking to each other. The other 2 could be like observing, crunching data, taking turns talking about like that. I like the idea of it. And I think it'll be very interesting to see, because I don't think any of us are actually planning to buy any land in the first 5 hours. Like,
I'll never say never, because if nobody shows up and see the end price for the tiers is, if tier 1's going for $283, I'm buying a lot of tier 1 at 283.
I can imagine a stream and we're just like, oh, no one's showing up, and we're all just running for our ledges and just like scrambling to buy land.
Oh, it's going to be open over here. I'll have it ready with
On
the buy,
ready
the one that I'm
ready to
picking out.
go. Just in case. Just in case. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure as always chatting to you, Deraji. Any finishing comments?
Now, just say thanks for having me on again. say from where to find me and what's going on, I have recently partnered up with the Illuvium guys, and so I have moved over from my Publish OX blog to everything new is going up on Illuvium. I think those guys are putting the greatest kind of third-party content of educational stuff. So really proud and happy with that partnership. So check me out over there. Leave you my Twitter address as well, and you can always hit me up on Discord.
Awesome. I'm actually gonna have the Infoluvial dudes on an interview very soon as well. It's been a long time coming. I've chatted to them for a while, and I really do like what they're doing over there. They've got all the data, all the information collated about Illuvium, and amazing articles from yourself and others on there, all in one place, just breaking down Illuvium for everyone. Definitely check out Deraji's articles. They are the honestly best reads that you could have in this space because they just break it all down. It's clean, it's simple, it's not like too much, it's not overbearing. It's simple breakdowns that are just like easy to read and also mash beautiful data into your brain. Thank you for supporting the community and for everything you do.
No, it's my pleasure.
Take care, bro.
All right, take it easy, Vetemor.
Okay, so we just finished like recording that video, and then me and Deraji kind of got talking, and we realized that his calculator on understanding Dutch auction pricing has a lot of information that anyone interested in land is really gonna want to just play around with because it's really easy to use. So if you are interested in that, literally tomorrow that video is coming out of just us just quickly, like 5-10 minutes, just showing you how to use it. It's really easy calculator to use, and you enjoy it if you are participating in the land sale. You can run all your numbers in, like insert how much Revdis you're gonna, like figure out how much Revdis you're gonna get, and also just like what kind of lands can you afford based on how much SLV you have, and like at what time do you buy. Like it's just brilliant. It's really well made, and we're going to be breaking it all down literally tomorrow in that short breakdown video. See you guys there.